A top 10 list, you say? Okay, why not? Hello and welcome to me, the Connor Penguin, doing a top 10 list of my 10 favourite sci-fi fantasy series. And the current date is December 2021, so this is accurate as of that time. I could read something coming up that will displace it, but this is how it stands for now. I got asked to do this by some friends who said to me, Connor, you're doing a booktuber account. For the love of God, do a top 10 list. Everyone does a top 10 list. You need to do a top 10 list. And I said to them, okay. So I'm going to ask you all just to like and subscribe, comment down below if you agree with what I say. If you disagree, let me know if this makes you want to read any of them. And all of these will already have or will be featured on my 5, 4, and 3 videos, where I give you 5 reasons for reading a book or series and 3 reasons why it might not be for you. All of these will be covered on it in time, but that series only recently just started, as did this account. I don't like any of you. I actually have to choose? Fine. We'll give the 10th place spot to The Poppy Wall by R.F. Kuang. A fantastic book set in a fictionalized version of China. The series follows a young girl, Fang Runing, as she attends a military academy meant primarily for the citizens of higher class people. She's outcasted, but is taught martial arts while there, and without giving too much away, learns secret abilities that she really shouldn't have, and then when the country goes to war, she goes off. If you've ever read the Magician's Guild, The Novice, and the High Lord by Trudy Caravan, this book alone does everything that trilogy does, and then expands into the Dragon Republic and the Burning God. In many ways, the Poppy War is just a setup for the epic confrontations we have, not just at the end of this book, but in those two as well. It's well worth a read. If you're a fan of anything of Asian culture, it's worth reading. If you've ever played the video game Jade Empire, it's well worth reading. This, I was shocked at how much I loved this, because I decided just to get this based off a recommendation from another booktuber, and when I read it, oh my God, I couldn't stop. I ended up buying the Burning God before I'd even finished this one, because I just knew this series I was going to finish it all in one go, and I did. And I did. Ninth place goes to, and I'm sorry Goku, the Lycanius trilogy by James Islington. Islington? I'm going to say Islington. An absolutely fantastic series set in a fantasy world in which magic users are oppressed. There's 2 types of magical users, and one of them recently was controlling the government, but were seen as tyrants. So when the common people overthrew them, they were wiped out. They were called the augurs. And then the people who used the lesser magic were imprisoned and watched, and had to wear bindings when they go out in public. And it follows the story of a young man who realizes he has the powers of an augur. Now, this series was brought to my attention at JordanCon in 2017, when it was the featured book. Everyone who attended was given this book. And I remember hearing from some people afterwards, oh no, it's really good. You've got to read it. So I decided to give it a go, and was shocked at how well crafted it was. And that continues on in its second and third one. If you're a fan of time travel, in particular, the sort of stories that show you a little bit of the world, but then slowly zoom out so you can see that it's nothing like what it was, this is definitely the book series for you. talking about it now makes me want to read it again, because every time I read it through, I spot something that I missed the time before. I'm going to say that about quite a few books in this list, but this one, if you're a fan of the Wheel of Time or anything like that, this is definitely worth reading for you. Let's put you back, Goku. And sorry, Mav, because our 8th place is going to be The Bobiverse. First book, We Are Legion, We Are Bob, by Dennis E. Taylor. This is a good series for anybody who likes a laugh and likes anything even remotely nerdy or geeky, or is into computer programming in any kind of way. This series follows Bob Johansson, who is killed about there into the book. He is then uploaded into the body of a space probe, like 100, 200 years in the future, and is launched into space in a very see what you can find way. He has the ability to create other versions of himself, and by the time we get to about this part of the series, there's hundreds of thousands of Bobs out there, hence the name We Are Legion, We Are Bob. We see Bob explore the universe, create other versions of himself, and eventually come back to try and help humanity. A absolutely wicked read, especially if you're into things like Magic 2.0 or any kind of sci-fi exploration, The Expanse even, that sort of thing. This is well worth it. Our seventh, I should cut this. I'm not going to. Our 7th space spot goes to Peter Riebrett's The Demon Cycle, first book, The Painted Man, or Warded Man, depending upon where you live. This series is horrific, it's ghastly, it's ghouly, and it's pretty demonic. Demons have risen up from the center of the earth, and they've begun shredding humanity to pieces. Humanity has no way to fight them, only to defend against them, but even that's not perfect, and humanity is slowly being worn down. Story follows a young boy who wants to learn all he can about fighting demons, and explores the world in a very dangerous, stupid way in order to do so. If you're a fan of horror, if you're a fan of demonic summonings, deals with demons, that sort of thing, this is definitely for you. If you're a fan of hopeless fights that the heroes stand absolutely no chance in winning, it's winter and I'm in a t-shirt. I should cut this. I should start this one again, but I'm not going to. Demon Cycle, read it. In 6th place, we have The Lies of Loch Lamora, The Gentleman Bastards, by Scott Lynch. A very, very funny series, but in particular, it's very good if you're a fan of crime, especially crime from the point of view of the criminal. Loch Lamora is the fabled Thorn of Comor, an unbeatable swordsman, master thief, friend to the poor, a man who can walk through walls, it says, the noble's bane. He's not really any of that. He's about 5'5", and if he holds a sword, he'll probably cut himself. But he's a master con man, and the cleverness of Scott Lynch in creating this character, in the way he writes him, in the way he writes his crew, is fantastic. It's well worth a dozen reads. If you haven't read it already, you really should, especially if you're a fan of heists. In my particular, the 3rd book, The Republic of Thieves, is my favourite, in which the crew is actually hired to rig an election. A group of thieves, a group of criminals running the country? Who ever heard of such a thing? In 5th place, we have The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. I'm sorry, Groot. I'm sorry, Hobbit. So this series, if you haven't read it already, you really need to. Follows Arthur Dent, who escapes Earth seconds before its destruction, and then follows him as he hitchhikes around the galaxy. Now that I actually think about it, I've read this series quite a few times. He doesn't hitchhike that much, but he has the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, the book that explains how to get around the universe at his disposal in order to guide him in this weird and wonderful place. This is quite possibly the funniest series I've ever read in my entire life. Douglas Adams was a master of the craft. It was followed up a few years after his death by Ian Coifer of Artemis Fowl fame. And it concludes the story masterfully. This is well worth reading. The first 3 books are definitely my favourite, in particular the 3rd one, Life, the Universe and Everything. whether it's the paranoid android, the incredibly depressed paranoid android Marvin, or Zaphod Beeblebrox, the galactic president who kidnapped himself. I mean, stay. Well worth a read. Stay. In the last spot before the podium, we have in 4th place, The Kingkiller Chronicles. First book, The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. Now, this book is, and its sequel, are masterpieces. If anyone ever says to me they're not a fan of sci-fi fantasy, or they don't think it can be great literature, the first book I recommend to them isn't one of my all-time favorites, even though this is in 4th place. It's this one. The prose is beautiful. The characters are designed perfectly. The way the story is told is so artful, so careful, so precise, that every few years I read through it, and every few years I notice something new that I missed the last time. Whether it's one of the stories told around the fire at night that's actually an in-depth history of the creation of the Fey realm, or a little story that's told by the main character to his friends while drunk, that's actually a huge secret into the backstory of what happened a few years before the story began. This is so well done. Not a beat is missed. If you think a word is capitalized and it shouldn't be, it should be. The series' 3rd book is The Doors of Stone. Mr. Rothfuss is working on that at the moment, and I cannot wait to read it. It's going to be spectacular, I know. And if you haven't already, Mr. Rothfuss is currently doing his World Builders charity. His fundraiser is going on as we speak. I don't actually know if I'll get this video up in time in order to say click here to donate. But even so, World Builders supporting Heifer International is well worth checking out if you haven't already. I decided to compile a few different series together in order to give our 3rd place spot to The Cosmere, made up of the Stormlight Archive, Mistborn, Warbreaker, Elantris, the Essays of Arcanum, Unbounded, White Sand, all written by Brandon Sanderson. Now, this series is one of my all-time favorites. Mr. Sanderson was worried that if he created from scratch a 60-book-long series and pitched it to publishers, that he would be wasting his time. They'd immediately say no, and then he'll have worked on all that for nothing. So instead, he did it subtly. He did it smoothly. He released Elantris, and then, he wrote Dragonsteel first, and then White Sand, and then a few others, but none of them got published. But when he finally published Elantris, he then moved on to the Final Empire, the Mistborn series. He released The Way of Kings, the Soma Archive. All of these books take place in the same world, with 6 books out so far in the Mistborn series, 4 books out so far in the Stormlight series, expected 10, expected 11 for Mistborn. Elantris and Warbreaker sequels in the works. 3 books of White Sand are already out. All of these taking place together, as well as about a dozen short stories as well. Everything from Dawnshard of the Stormlight series to Shadows, Silence in the Forest of Self, which is masterful, to The Emperor's Soul, which actually netted him a Hugo Award. All of these take place in the same universe, just on different planets, each with a different magic system. All of them can be enjoyed individually without reading the others. However, when you start to read all of them, you start to become a Cosmere detective. You start looking out for, oh, that character is actually so-and-so from that book. Oh, and that character is actually in disguise. That character is blah, blah, blah. And where is Hoyd? Hoyd is a book character who takes a position in every single book. Looking for Hoyd can be a nightmare, but he is always there. Anybody who wants to read the Cosmere, there's a few different starting points. I started at The Way of Kings, but I wouldn't recommend that as a good starting point. Perhaps Elantris or Mistborn. Mistborn is a fantastic heist book and about a group of thieves who overthrow a Dark Lord by robbing him blind. Warbreaker is about 2 princesses who one of them gets sold to a rival kingdom, and the other one goes to rescue her. Emperor's Soul is about a forger, an art thief. Arcana Unbounded is a collection of the short stories. Elantris is about, magic zombies. It's brilliant. There's something for everyone inside the Cosmere, and even if you don't read the whole thing, there's definitely a series that I would recommend for you within it. Our second place silver medalist is the gold standard of urban fantasy, Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files. The series follows Harry, a private investigator / wizard, as he just tries to have a normal life, and it just doesn't go his way. He's approached by a femme fatale at the beginning of the first book, saying, "You gotta help me, my husband's missing," and things just explode from there. And when I say explode, I do not mean... Well, I do mean it. It's got 101 characters that you'll grow to love and 101 different types of villains. The series actually came about when Jim Butcher, who was studying at the University of Oklahoma, and desperate to be a swords and horses style fantasy writer, was told again and again and again by his writing teacher, "Have you thought about trying something else?" In the end, after the constant battering at his defenses, he finally gave in and decided to follow her advice to the letter. He would fill out all of her worksheets, all of her character descriptions, plot the book in the style that she mentioned, choose the genre of book that she recommended to him, and just do everything in the most uniform way as he was told, in order to show what a generic piece of work it would create. And then he turned in the first few chapters of the Dresden Files, and here we are, 19 books later, 17 books, 2 short story anthologies. He was just trying to prove his teacher wrong, and oh my God, what he created was truly amazing. Jim Butcher has released so many books in this series that some people wonder where to start, or are daunted at the start of actually starting a series this long. There's a few different points you can get in. You can start at book 1, you can start at book 3, or you can start at book 7. I personally recommend book 1 or book 3. I don't recommend starting at book 7, though that is a common starting point for a lot of people because of the zombie T-Rex. Yeah, this series has everything. Before we get on to our first place, I just want to give a few honorable mentions. First honorable mention goes to Brandon Sanderson's The Reckoners. I've lent my copy of The Reckoners out, so I don't actually have it at the moment in order to plop it right there. But it's a series about superheroes and supervillains, primarily supervillains, and regular people whose job it is to fight them. Well worth a read. Second honorable mention goes to the Halo books. Halo have got so many books out in their series right now. And when they were following along the plot of the games, they weren't that great. But the moment they stepped away and decided to do short stories or novellas or novels about what happens in the rest of the world outside of Master Chief's story, some truly fantastic stories were put together. My all-time favorite being Ghosts of Onyx. For years, this was my favorite book of all time, and is the only book I think I've ever sat down, at least for the first 10 years after I got it, that I sat down and read cover to cover in one sitting without moving. It is fantastic. It's brilliant. Well worth a read. And our final honorable mention goes to Magic 2.0 by Scott Mayer. I've already done a 5, 4, and 3 on Magic 2.0, but it is a hilariously funny comedy. Well worth a read if you're into anything nerdy, geeky, or you just kind of want to see what it's like if a computer programmer goes back in time to ancient Camelot, sets himself up as a wizard, and finds that he's not the first one to do that. And number 1, in first place, taking the gold medal, hi Matt, is Robert Jordan's The Wheel of Time. The Wheel of Time turns and ages come and pass, leaving memories that become legend. Legend fades to myth, and even myth is long forgotten when the age that gave it birth comes again. In one age, called the Third Age by some, an age yet to come, an age long forgotten, a wind rose in the mountains of mist. The The wind was not the beginning. There are neither beginnings nor endings to the turning of the wheel of time, but it was a beginning. The Wheel of Time is, in my opinion, the gold standard of what fantasy should be. It is the greatest piece of art I've ever had the privilege to sit down and read. I have read it from cover to cover 4 times in the past 7 years. And even though each reading takes me a couple of months, it's well worth it. Follows the group of kids from a farming village who were tapped on the shoulder and said, "Yeah, one of you is going to be the one to save the world. I don't know which. You better come with me." And throughout the series, they're all constantly going, "Okay, so this person's crazy, right? This person's crazy. No, this is mad. I want to go home." I mean, I don't want to get too much into it for people who haven't read the book or started the TV show, or maybe who are watching the TV show who don't want spoilers. Absolutely fine. I won't ruin anything for anyone. The Wheel of Time. If you are looking for a series that will stay with you for the rest of your life, The Wheel of Time is my #1 recommendation. If you don't care about how long a series is, if you don't care about how complex it's going to be, if you just care about getting a book recommendation of a fantastic series that is worth the time and has incredible payout, The Wheel of Time is what I would recommend to you 9 times out of 10. The only time I wouldn't recommend it is if you tell me I'm looking for something about a wizard in Chicago. Then I'd recommend the Dresden Files. But other than that, The Wheel of Time. And that was my top 10 sci-fi fantasy series for 2021. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. The top 3 on the list are very cemented, but the rest of them tended to bounce around a lot. I know Poppy War, when I first wrote this list, was at number 7, and Bobiverse was at number 10. However, the more I thought about it, the more I kind of gave way to the series that made me feel happier, that gave me a bit of joy. And while Poppyverse was a joy to read, an absolute joy to read, it didn't make me laugh anywhere near as much as, and I really do appreciate books that have a bit more comedy to them. Again, thank you for watching. Check out the other videos on the channel and have a lovely rest of your day.